Hello, and welcome to Smeg and the Femmes, a podcast to discuss Red Dwarf from a different perspective. I'm Janamali, and today I'll be talking about Series 6, Episode 5, Rimmerworld. And I'll be exploring this episode with the help of my guest, Veronica Rich. Welcome back to the podcast again, Veronica.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Hi. Okay, before we go any further, I'm just going to explain something to our listeners, which is we originally recorded this episode and the next one a few months ago, but we re-recorded it due to sound issues. I'm mentioning that because later on I'm going to mention something which wouldn't make sense if we were recording this recently, and also I want to mention that we're having a heat wave in the UK and. The heat is getting to me, so I will do my very best. But if I don't seem 100% on the ball, that is a reason.
I think your listeners will probably relate.
I hope so. Yes. Okay, so we'll just dive straight into the episode, and we start obviously with Rimmer's medical, with the scene with Crichton and Rimmer in the medbay, and of course it's you immediately well. I guess you don't actually, because it's a funny scene, but afterwards you might think about. Why does a hologram need a medical?
I wondered if I wondered about that. I don't know if he asked for it. I mean, they're all on a rotation, I guess. But it seems I got to thinking about it, and it seems to me that this is the sort of thing that Lister would kind of poo-poo away. And I almost wonder if Rimmer agreed to it just to get Lister to do it, or if Crichton talked him into it to get Lister to do it.
Possibly. I think actually. I will probably have to check the script pages. Hold on. I'm just checking. I had a feeling there was a line where Rimmer says that's why I'm asked for medical in the first place. I'm just looking for it.
While you're looking, I'm going to be a costume nerd and say, I like how this is the one of the few scenes that we've had in the series that we can see the entirety of Rimmer's outfit.
That's true.
Because this is one of my favorite outfits of his.
Yeah, you get to see it at angles that you don't usually see it at.
Yep.
Or just yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. There was a line where Rimmer says, "Crichton, I want to know. That's why I asked for medical. Is there bad news?" Yeah. So I mean, it is of course completely in character for Rimmer, even though he's a hologram to ask for medical. So it does kind of make sense that way.
But he asks for it, but then he doesn't want the others to know about his condition. Now, it works narratively for the story, because they go into the danger and, Lister doesn't know what's going on with him. But does it work in character? Rimmer usually loves to point out when he's suffering from something that he thinks the others have contributed to, causing on him, or he's suffering from something that, it makes him look like he's the one suffering for the good of the crew, like all this worry and all. So why would he ask for it? And then when he gets the result he expects, not rub it in everyone's face. All this stress in my life from having to oversee all of you or something.
You're right, actually. I mean, it doesn't really make sense in that respect. I mean, obviously the out of universe reason is, Rob and Doug, chose to write it this way, and they thought it'd be a funny scene, and it is a funny scene, so I mean, but yeah, I mean, of course we are we like to sort of analyze in universe reasons, because it just it makes more sense and it's more fun, rather than just, I mean, you can't just sort of sit here and say, well, they wrote it this way because they wanted to write it this way, because that'll be a pretty short podcast.
Right. But I mean, you give a character who loves to bitch something to bitch about and they don't.
It is kind of odd, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, there are a
Yeah,
lot of people keeping secrets in this episode. I mean, Lister is also keeping secrets. It's kind of odd.
that's true. That's true. I like there are a number of good lines here. Of course, one of my favorite is Crichton's. We're all perfectly well aware of what you are, sir.
That is such a clever way for Crichton to insult him without actually insulting him.
I know it's a good workaround because he can't call him anything. He can't outright say anything about him, but he can hint.
Oh yeah, I am gonna I had a look on my blog. I just typed Rimmerworld in to find if there were any interesting posts that I'd forgotten about, and I came across an old one from Lord Valerie Mimes. She was rewatching it a while ago, and she mentions this. I mean, and it's obviously joking, but I'm going to mention it because it's fine. It's fine anyway. She says in this scene we find out Rimmer is stressed out to the point of also almost having a hologrammatic aneurysm. Theory, him and Lister have started having sex, and it's sending his stress through the roof.
It would. Rimmer's one of the only people that would be more
Yes,
stressed with regular sex
exactly.
than without it.
She also adds, this it also explains why he doesn't want Crichton to tell the others, because he wouldn't want Lister to know that he's feeling this way. And also, it makes Lister's later speech, think about it, everything we've been through, doesn't that mean anything to you, speech, when he deserts him later on, have a lot more meaning.
Oh, I like that theory. I had not seen that, I don't think, but I like it. Page
I
approved.
think it's for a few years ago. I should probably have reblogged it again. I'll do that later. But yeah, I mean, yeah, obviously I don't actually think that is what's happening in universe. But I mean, somebody could write a good fanfic about it, and I would read that fic.
Right.
It's just a fun interpretation, I think.
One of the things I noticed here too is where Chris is delivering his lines. I don't remember if it's this scene or I think it may be a little later on where he's doing the worry balls and he's talking at the same time. And what little I know of acting is I realize that's like a difficult thing to do, like deal with a complicated prop at the same time you're trying to deliver
Oh yeah,
confusing
definitely.
lines. Just a little bit of
I mean, I
admiration
think it's
there.
probably something to do with the fact that apparently it's very difficult for the human body to sort of keep up two motions say at the same time. And
Right,
obviously acting is emotion.
right,
So I mean, yeah, it must be I mean, obviously they learn to do it. And that's why they're professionals. But I mean,
right.
it must be pretty damn difficult, mustn't it? Yeah. Uh,
I guess.
Yeah. Also, I've got a note here. The joke where Rimmer, literally cheated on his eye test. It just kind of underlines how fanatical he is about. I must pass every test.
Well, what the funniest part of that, I think, is that, and it sailed over me like every other time I've watched it, but he sneaked in there. He wrote everything down on his boots, and I'm thinking, but isn't it just as far away on your feet as it would be to look at the eye
It
chart?
probably is more or less, is it? I mean, it's
I mean, I understand for the joke, it works. It's just it's always flown over my head
well,
before. It's like,
actually that harks right back to his attempted cheating in the end. Where he writes most of
yeah,
the answers on and then puts all his clothes on. So he can't actually read the briefings.
exactly. Of course, the joke of the eye chart thing is that it's a distance game. So, but yeah, it was a good call. That
It's just so yeah. I mean I do like this scene. It's very good as far as characterization for Rimmer goes. I mean. Yeah. Oh, I do
right.
also want to mention there's this deleted scene from Rimworld, which was sort of kind of rendered non-canonical by Trojan, because where he's talking about his brothers, and how successful they are, and then Crichton says, "But isn't it true that they all went mad and killed the crews of their ships?" And he just says, "The bit personal, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Was it this episode or another where they had the deleted scene where it went into detail, like what had happened to his brothers, like that they is that what you were saying, that
Yeah, sorry, it's
it's
a
the
deleted
deleted
scene from
scene?
this episode. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I'm basically agreeing with you, but yeah, I had forgotten about it until you just mentioned it. And I had forgotten about it so hard it booted my
It's
brain
okay,
from
because I mean,
behind.
as I say, it was rendered non-canonical by Trojan. I mean, if you consider deleted scenes canon, I mean, some people do, some people don't. I mean, most of us, are like, if I like a deleted scene, it's canon. If I don't, no.
unless unless Howard wanted so badly to fit in with the others that he somehow put out a false story just for Arnold about, oh well, he went just as high as the others and he went just as crazy as they did, and
I mean,
he did the
that
same
is
thing.
that is
It's a stupid thing to
that is actually
lie
possible. I
about,
mean,
but
he could have, pulled that off. I mean, it's not beyond the realms of possibility. Yeah, I mean, this is
right.
going slightly
So
off on a tangent, but I've never quite understood why some people's reaction to the revelation about Howard in Trojan is to assume, that all his brothers were actually total failures who were lying. I think it's actually funnier if it was just Arnold and Howard who were lying.
maybe they share a
Possibly.
father. Who knows?
Yes, that is possible. Yes. Oh yes. More about this scene. I knew it. It's the headaches, isn't it? And the heart palpitations, the blackouts, the chest pains, and the voices. It's something to do with that, isn't it? Sorry, it just makes me laugh.
Ah, hey, listen, that's just how some people feel on
Unfortunately, yes.
normal days. So
And obviously it is absolutely canon that Rimmer suffers from severe anxiety and actually has panic attacks. I mean, I think it might be this series 6, where it actually becomes canon that he literally says, "I'm going to go and have a humiliating panic attack under a table." So
yeah, yeah.
yeah. I mean, I
Oh,
sympathise on as someone who has had that. I mean, it's a horrible experience. Yeah. Yeah.
same.
Anyway, I'm just trying to think if I've got anything else to say about
So.
this opening scene, or whether to move on. Let me see. Hmm.
I would point out, I can't tell if this is the sleeping quarters with a bio bed pullout or actual metabay. If it's actual metabay, that's pretty impressive because
I
Starbug is
think
not
it
that
is.
big.
Yeah. It's basically it's a combination of the a bedroom and a medibay, because later on when they briefly go into stasis. Actually, that might be out of time. One of these episodes when they briefly go into stasis, we see Kat and Lister, in the same sort of bed, yeah, and going to stasis. So, yeah, I assume, yeah. Which I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know if you had time to listen to Ema Hawk yet, but I do. I think I briefly discussed with Arcane Moody about how in Series 6 it appears that Lister and Kat are actually sharing sleeping quarters. Which is a development.
I thought of that. So, yeah, I did listen.
Yeah, I mean,
That's a
it's
good point.
obviously the sleeping quarters are cramped. They're in cramped quarters on Starbug. But I think that actually makes it more surprising that Kat would share with Lister. Frankly, I mean, I would have thought Kat would be like, I have my own room. This is not negotiable.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
This is obviously before Series 7, where they made the
Needs must,
Starbug
I
a lot
guess.
bigger. In Series 6, it's still quite cramped.
Right.
Okay, let me see. Yeah, well, I think I'll move on to the next scene now, which is Rimmer specifically asked Crichton not to tell the others, but I mean, I've got my notes here that Lister's later behaviour does kind of suggest that he might have noticed Rimmer's increased anxiety, because he literally says later on, "I didn't want to cause any panic or alarm."
Well, and let's face it, even without a medical, he's known Rimmer enough years that he knows that what will set him off, and that sometimes things like that do tend to push him over
Yeah.
the edge.
And then of course, let me see. Yeah, Rimmer literally has a panic attack right in front of him, and we get the delightfully slushy line: "Grind those balls, sir, grind them."
He's a special boy. I think that's the one that I was thinking of. I made the note in my notes about how impressive it was,
Yes,
with the acting and the grinding. So yeah.
it is impressive. Yes, yes. Phew. Okay. Yeah. So in this next scene, they're all in the cockpit, and they come across the simulant ship which they'd encountered in Gummer Live the Apocalypse, which is now more or less ruined, and they make the dubious decision to board it for supplies.
Yes. Hey, lichen soup gets to you after a
It
while, I
does, yeah.
guess.
I mean, it's kind of an interesting debate because I do actually agree. Rimmer is right. It's a stupid risk to take, but I mean, I don't know if I was in Lister and Cat's circumstances, I might take that risk as well. To say,
I Yeah, I think we've all can point to at least one situation where we have gotten out and gone where we shouldn't have, when we shouldn't have, just to get something good to drink or eat that, really we probably shouldn't have.
exactly, yes, yeah. Uh, we do sort of find out later, when he's talking to Crichton, that Lister does actually have a reason, an additional justification, which is their reserve fuel tank is punctured and they're actually running out of fuel. So he does have a better reason than just I want some curry, Whereas in Tika to Ride, it is just literally I want curry.
Uh,
Yeah.
we won't get into that
We won't.
mess.
Yeah, I mean, what I have done with Aubergine, and that will be published in the fairly near future. But yes, yeah.
Oh
So
yeah.
I did wonder actually. Does that mean that sort of in sort of series 7 and series 8, Lister is kind of backsliding morally, whereas the hologram version of Rimmer is kind of taking tentative steps in the other direction because he's off being Ace.
I made the note later on because we haven't gotten to it yet, but you get to where they show up. Oh, never mind. I lost my note here.
Is
I was going to say something about Rimmer's being careful, but yeah, I think you're right. I think I'm thinking of something else. He is. I don't know that he's getting more cautious. I think maybe he's just finding better ways to say it. I think after being with them for a while, and he realizes, if I say day, they're going to say night. Maybe he has learned to phrase his things, or at least couch them a little differently, so that it comes across more reasonable and less weasel.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, I think you're right there. Yes. Yeah. Uh-huh. Oh, I did want to mention also when they're talking about the simulants, we get this nasty little detail about how the simulants stock food to keep their victims alive for decades
Yeah.
in constant agony, And I reiterate, and it's kind of a running theme for me. What morons created these simulants?
Well, I mean, if you create them, it's canon that humans created them, as humans create everything they run into. And most of what is done has been done for profit or war. So it makes sense that you would create them if you thought you could control them to keep your enemy in line.
It
Humans,
does, yeah.
there's a whole history of humans creating things, that they're going to use to subjugate someone else, and they never anticipate it being turned back on themselves.
exactly. I was thinking about it because in Sirens we briefly meet, well, not the real Professor Mamet, but a siren posing as her, and we find out, that she had the intelligence, to program Crichton's the Crichton line, so that it absolutely could not physically harm her in any circumstance whatsoever. So you kind of wonder why the people who created these stimulants didn't, I don't know, have some kind of put something in, which meant that there were at least some humans they couldn't physically hurt. It's kind of odd, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, they might have programmed them not to assault them. Again, we're getting into the whole, we could get into the whole capitalism greed thing, but there have been those. You could totally see, someone like Elon Musk programming something, don't harm me or these select people, but do what you want to anyone else.
Frankly, yes, yeah, you absolutely could imagine that, yeah.
So
it completely makes sense, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, yeah. Oh, I found my note here. This is the one I put. Does the fact that Lister, when they run into their past selves later, does the fact that Lister makes a point of telling past Rimmer he's going to abandon them in an escape pod actually give Rimmer the idea to do so? Or is that what sets off Rimmer's worry and insistence they not go on the resupply mission in the first place? In other words, does that give him the anxiety and all, maybe? Is it possible for once Rimmer's the one in the right and sort of quasi-justified in his later irritation? So
Possibly, but the thing about that is, I mean, wouldn't all of the, they don't just tell that to Rimmer, they tell that to the rest of the crew. So I mean, wouldn't the rest of by that notion, wouldn't the rest of the crew also know that this was a disaster that they shouldn't do and to start with? I mean,
nothing about that scene makes sense. They all look way too calm, when their future selves pop in like it's a Tuesday. And I'm thinking, how much does this happen?
I mean, it really doesn't. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, it's clearly one of those, Red Dwarf things where they're like, it's funny. We don't care if it makes sense. It's funny.
Right, exactly. So sometimes, we examine these things and we're right to do so, but sometimes, everything is in service of comedy, even logic.
Exactly. I mean, it's just a question of striking a balance. I mean, sometimes you analyze these things and they deserve further analysis, and sometimes you just have to say, look, it was a rule of funny.
Yep.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Right. Okay. Just yeah. So here we go onto the next scene, which is where Crichton is saying to Lister, are you sure this is really a good idea, sir? Etc. etc. Ooh, just notice. I just noticed. Sorry, I'm looking at the script pages, which some kind person did decades ago, and it's saying there's a Space Corps directive, and Crichton says, any officer caught sniffing the saddle of the exercise bike or in the women's gym will be discharged without trial. And it's just, ugh. I mean,
yeah.
because presumably someone actually did that, or they wouldn't have made that regulation.
Yeah, there's a lot of laws like that you think, why?
Yeah, you just, I mean, some of them are really funny, like, no officer should report for duty in a ginger toupee or something, but some of them just some of them are just kind of gross.
Well, and there's the humorous part too that you have to wonder, some of these Space Corps directives that Rimmer cites, they usually end up being something weird or gross. And you think, is he really just mistaking stroke B for stroke C or something? Or is he actually like citing things that he's paid special attention to for real from the back of his brain?
Yeah, you have to wonder, don't you? It is kind of odd, I mean, yeah.
Although there is another theory that I've never seen anyone else put forth, that again, this is a way for Crichton to get back at Rimmer without actually insulting him in person. Is if it turns out that it was all a grand humor and that every time he corrects him on one of these, he's actually lying.
It's possible because I mean, obviously,
because who's going to go look it up?
Yeah, I mean, it's just I mean. I mean, obviously, Cat and Lister couldn't care less about the regulations, so they don't know. They don't know whether it's true or not.
I mean, it'd be hilarious if Rimmer's been right all along and Crichton's been, gaslighting him.
Would be funny. Well, it would be kind of funny because I mean, I did notice in an earlier series 6 episode. Where Crichton was doing the usual. Are you sure, sir? Actually, no, it's this, blah blah. And he just went on and on and on. Really sort of rubbing it into the absolute maximum. And I thought to myself,
yep, yep.
Okay, Crichton. I mean, yeah, your innocent front here is wearing off rather rapidly. You're absolutely taking pleasure in doing this.
He's learned from. I'm telling you, he's learning from Lister. This is one of his. He can't like outright lie, but this is one of those. I could see this being like one of his little attempts to be like, oh, Mr. Rimmer's kind of an idiot. He's not going to go look this up later. I can play on his. I can play on his, by the time he has a chance to look it up later, there's going to be other stuff happen. He's not going to remember it. And he's just insecure enough that he's going to believe, that he's wrong anyway. So this is like a small way I can test my lying and get at him.
Somebody should write a little Vic about that. Maybe from Crichton's POV, because we need to. It would be funny, and there aren't that many Crichton centric Vics, So
exactly.
Any Crichton fans listening, free idea.
You can have it for free. There you go.
Right. Okay, just moving on. Oh yes, of course I do love the little bit where Rimmer is saying, Lister, we'd be fools not to listen to Crichton, etc., etc. And then of course Crichton says, well, just let me and Mr. Rimmer go in your place. And it's like, how the smeg would you know, Bob from hell?
Yep. Rimmer ought to know by now. Anytime he says anything complimentary, he's going to come back to bite him.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So even though this is clearly a bad idea, Rimmer is persuaded to go with them because the alternative, which is the rampaging sibilants might somehow find him on Starboard by himself. He's enough of a coward, is to just go with them because of safety in numbers.
That's true.
Yep. I mean, to be honest, if I was, in that situation, 4 survivors in deep space, I wouldn't stay behind separately anywhere if it could be avoided either.
Right.
Yeah.
But Lister does have the sense not to tell them that they can't use the gun until they actually get over into the ship.
Yes, that is a smart move on Lister's part. I mean, obviously, all of them, look at him like they want to kill him, But I mean, that was actually a sensible thing not to tell them because, I mean, I think in the circumstances, I mean, we're noticing, of course, I mean, Lister is, kind of, taking the role of a team leader here, because I mean, not because he particularly wants to, but because he's clearly best suited to it, and somebody has to do it. Yeah,
and he does, and he's doing pretty well. Even when the simulant comes out and he's talking with her, he's doing pretty well at potentially getting away.
Mm-hmm.
Then he pulls out the "you're a bit of a babe" line. What?
Yeah, I mean, I do kind of mean, I mean, I mean, yes.
Just walk away, man.
As deranged simulants go, she is a bit of a babe, but I mean, this is not the time nor place.
No, and it's a deliberate choice because they're all turning away, and then he turns back and does it, and it's like, my dude, are you that desperate? Seriously?
Clearly he is that desperate. I mean, I guess we kind of get that underlined in Stuck Me a Clipper where he's having AR sex.
Yeah. And then And then it makes, Lord Valerie Mimes, her thing about him and Rimmer getting it on makes more sense in that
It
context.
does.
Because he does that, and then Rimmer is like creeping out. And it's like, you can almost see Rimmer thinking, well, hell, if you're hitting on her, I'll just leave.
Or alternatively, I mean, if you're going to go with the they're actually having sex, you're actually having sex routes, you could say maybe that's his last ditch attempt to get women not to do it. Look, man,
Right.
you're not going to leave me to have it off with a stimulant, are you?
Yep. Yep. The way he just keeps repeating it, and Rimmer just keeps creeping away towards that pod. Oh, it's good physical
Yes,
comedy.
it is funny. Yeah, and of course there's the classic sort of they're talking to the simulant. She doesn't realise that actually Lister is actually talking to Rimmer.
Right.
It works well. Why are you talking to me like this? I'm a completely deranged killer. Why are you talking to me as though I care about any of this, etc. It's funny.
Yeah. The only part of that even with all the excuses and everything, the only part of that really annoys me about Rimmer, it's not even so much that he's escaping or getting out of the way. It's that he does it and he knows that by doing it, it's gonna like knock everything around and make it collapse. And it's like that's the part that kind of pisses you off. It's that he's the one actively putting them in danger by
Yeah, I
doing
mean,
this physical danger.
I did. I do. Yeah, I've got a note here. Yeah, obviously, we are Red Dwarf fans and we love Rimmer as a character, but this is probably his low point, morally speaking. The
Oh
fact
yeah.
is, he abandons his crew mates on a ship he knows is disintegrating with a killer simulant. And later on, he's surprised that they escape using a teleporter. So it's not like he was thinking, well, they can get away using a teleporter. He obviously hadn't thought of that. So there you go. Yeah.
Right. This might be a good point for me to throw in my larger note. The one thing I remember pretty well from our first time of recording was throughout the entire series run, through all 13 seasons, whatever. I've said before, I feel like this is the turning point for the character in the entirety of the whole series. Because after this episode, Rimmer is less cowardly and selfish overall than he was, and seems to take more responsibility in bad situations, or at least he doesn't desert quite like he used to. So I think this is like his big after this
Yes,
episode.
obviously the next episode, does kind of redeem him quite a lot in that respect. I know in Tika to Ride,
Right.
it's disputed. Well, we'll get to this, but we get to it. But in Tika to Ride, it's disputed whether he actually saved him or not. But actually, that isn't really the point. The point is he tried. That is actually the point.
Right. Right. After this point, he's less smeggy, I guess maybe is the way to put it. He's less likely to run off and
Yeah.
abandon everybody.
I'm just going to go on a little bit of a tangent, but
So,
it is still relevant, which is, and this is why I mentioned that we were re-recording it, because I'm just going to briefly bring in something from the second series of Good Omens, which obviously we've all been kind of funny over in the last month or so. Don't worry, anyone who's listening who hasn't seen it yet, this is not a spoiler. I just was going to mention, that I would really, really, really like to see Rimmer do an apology dance.
yeah.
I
Yep.
mean, yeah,
You were right.
yeah.
I was wrong.
Lister sometimes needs to do one too, but but this episode, if ever was a character who needed to do it, it's Rimmer.
Oh man, Rimmer needs to orchestrate a whole, grand 1930s
Yes,
Hollywood
and
musical dance for his entire
the thing is,
years of
he does actually canonically
cowardice.
love musicals. He denies it, but he does. Yeah,
Yes.
in way ahead in Officer Rimmer. He basically says to Crichton, I don't enjoy the theatre, but I mean it's blatantly untrue, because we've heard him sing, we've seen him do various dance routines in dreams, and yes, I know that's dreams, but we've heard him sing, so he clearly knows various musical songs. I mean, in fact, from the memory,
Oh, yeah.
Someone to Watch Over Me, his favourite song, that is actually from musical as well. So yeah.
Well, and his If I Were a Rich Man, The King and I, back in Time Slides. I think I'm using the correct reference.
If I Were a Rich Man, I think it's from Fiddler on the Roof, but it's
I was going to say some theater kid's going to come in and correct me,
I'm
that's
quite a bit of a
okay.
musical fan, so I mean, but you're right. It is
You can
Time
do it.
Slides where he does that, and also he makes various sort of references, like I'm off to see the wizard, in parallel universe. Yeah, and oh, dare I say it? Hello, my pretty, and demons and angels.
Oh yes.
Yes,
he's a dramatic little bitch.
I mean, I know a lot of these, are kind of general references that you don't have to be particularly into musicals to get, but some of them are kind of more specific. You do need to be into musicals to get. I mean, Totty helpfully did a post, gathering together all the various references. I mean, there's more I can think of right now, but anyway. Yes, So basically, I would really,
yes.
Frankly, I think the show has missed a trick by not. I mean, if Doug ever, if we ever get more Red Dwarf, Doug needs to make Chris do a musical routine, an elaborate apology dance.
That would fit.
Or somebody needs to write a Vic or something, because I mean, it's just funny. Anyway.
So they're pursuing. So when they're pursuing Rimmer in the next scene, I had not seen it before. It's just something that made me chuckle. I didn't notice that when they're telling him, that he's accelerating away from them, Lister uses the nickname Flash for him.
Yeah. Yes, so that's of course,
which is kind of cute.
Flash Gordon, which is kind of a similar kind of hero to Ace, I guess. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, obviously he's being sarcastic, actually, Flash, it's very sarcastic. But yeah, I mean, it makes sense. It makes sense in the context, It is kind of ironic, of course, because I mean, in the very next episode, we do see Rimmer do something which is in the context heroic. So yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh yes, the next scene is where Lister, Crichton, and Cat materialise, and they find in past versions of themselves. And I do like this scene, but it is funny, because past Crichton is so annoyed with future Crichton. For goodness sake, Crichton, I'm very cross. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pardon my paradox.
You should have known better.
And as you said, it doesn't make sense, that Lister tells him here, you Scarpin in that escape pod, you Judas, etc., etc. And past Rimmer really doesn't help his case. Oh, I'm safe then. Thank God for that.
Yep. Exactly.
However, they go back quickly to their own timeline. Starbug manages to escape from the simulant ship. They're back on Starbug, and now I'm going to say, I mean, we do get a lot of cat lines where you might think, okay, he's being a bit mean to Rimmer here, but I mean, this one is absolutely justified. So we lost Mr. Rimmer. All in all, 100% successful trip.
It's hard to disagree. If I were in their position, I'd probably be a lot angrier than they seem to be.
I mean, Lister does say, I can't believe he did that, not even Rimmer, but I mean, that's, in circumstances, that's fairly mild. I mean, he does also say next time I see him, he'll be suffering from a fist-related teeth disorder.
Yeah. And it's so nice. Isn't it so nice he could actually hit him in the teeth now because he's hurt light?
Of course, yeah. Oh, I did maybe get me thinking though. I believe it's Feline Ranger who's made the point. We never actually see Rimmer and Lister come to physical blows. I mean, we sort of hear about it and it gets hinted at and stuff, but they never actually go there, which is probably because maybe it just wouldn't be funny, But it's probably funnier to talk about.
It's possible. It's possible. It's also exaggerated too. That you know, you know how sometimes you'll say that you did something when you're telling a story when you only thought about doing it or saying it. So I wonder if that's kind of what it is too.
I would say so. Yes. Yeah. Okay, yeah. So, yeah. I mean, so Rimmer kind of digs himself a bigger hole, trying to believe, that it was all he deserted them as part of a crafty plan to create a diversion. Yeah, right.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I like how they set it up, making it sound like, oh, we're not going to find you for a year and a half. I love how they set it up as that's a long, long, long time. And then they jump into the 600 years.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of sort of escalation comedy. It just the situation just gets worse and worse and worse. No, actually, it's not 30 years. It's not 100 years. It's actually 600 years. It's
Exactly.
yeah.
I mean, yeah.
But the thing is, it is actually kind of a clever way of getting back some sympathy for Ribbit because I mean, obviously, he's about to get way more than actually his just desserts for what he's actually done. So it is it
Yep.
is kind of clever in that way.
Yep. Yep. And then they go through the wormhole. One of the things I'm wondering is we never see them coming back to the wormhole. So I always wondered, do they end up closer to Earth or further away from Earth going to that wormhole? Just a side thought.
I hadn't thought about it because I mean, they go through so many wormholes. I've kind of lost track. But yeah, that is an interesting theory. I mean, actually, it would make sense if in the next episode, now of time, I mean, where it's made a point that everyone is very stressed and in a bad mood and stuff. It would make sense if that was partly because when they came back out of the wormhole, they found that they were actually further away from Earth than ever.
That's true.
Yeah,
It would fit
I like
in.
that. So I think that's a good way to sort of fathom it.
But it doesn't, and it just fits in with the theory I've had about this show for years that every episode takes place in a parallel universe to the ones that came before it. So
Yeah.
it seems to work.
I mean that does make sense, of course, because obviously we know it's canon, that this universe they have multiverses. Yeah.
I mean, they beat Marvel by years on the multiverse.
Yes, they do. Yes. Yeah. It's not personally how I choose to think of it because, sort of character continuity and stuff. But I mean, it does
Right.
absolutely make sense. I mean, if you're driving yourself mad trying to figure out the continuity and so on, it's a nice way to get around it. Okay, yeah.
Right.
So moving on to Rimmerworld. Well, Rimmer landing on we see Rimmer landing on Rimmerworld, and they find a nice way to utilize Chris's vocal talents by having him narrate his log.
Yes. Yeah. It's a good way. It's a good use of tell don't show, which is, you can't always show everything, but it's one of the good uses of it.
Yeah, it's a good way to sort of tell us what's happening without having to spend too long on it. Yeah.
The only maddening
Yeah.
thing about the reseeding, the terraforming, is it actually kind of makes sense. I mean, there's a scientific basis in it with the storms and the seeding and everything, but the funniest part to me is when he comes out and there's all these mature trees. Like, okay, 6 days, whatever.
That is kind of odd, isn't it? Yeah. Although it does lead to a slightly touching moment. Where he sort of stops and smells the flowers, which is not something we see River do pretty much ever.
And then he talks about how he's going to have no problem boinking his sister. Oh,
Yeah.
It's immediately ruined.
Oh, God. I mean, God, if that's I think we just kind of sum them up in a few sentences.
Pretty much. He's a precious uwu, but ooh, is he gross.
Yes. Oh dear. Unfortunately, now I'm thinking of that post on Tumblr which goes round. So would you fuck a clone of yourself? Blah blah.
Well, we know.
All those different characters. I mean, I think we do have a Red Dwarf version. I mean, I can't. It would take me a while to find it. Oh yeah. I think Kachansky is the one who says it's not. It would be like sort of having sex yourself. It's gross.
Yeah. Well, yeah. She didn't know. She didn't know about Lister and Lister, and she didn't know about Rimmer and Rimmer here. So.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Of course. Yeah. Yeah. I forgot. I mean, of course. Yeah. Kochansky, the second version of Kochansky, obviously, presumably, unless somebody told her, doesn't know about Jim and Bexley. So yeah. God. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, he creates this clone, but he's going to have to create others because even if he had something going on with his quote sister here, nothing could come of it because he's a hologram. So, I mean, him doing anything would just be for fun. So,
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious. Then they, everybody shows up and they get arrested and all. And what makes me wonder is, I get all the early people Rimmer created would have looked like him and looked like each other. Um, he references, later on they reference the banishment of people with mutations. Does this mean that he keeps using the seeding tech and that his clones keep using the seeding tech to continue creating first generation people every so often to start over? Because if they're interbreeding, I mean, eventually that would have to come to an end. I mean, it would eventually not end well if they keep banishing the mutants. So, I
I
don't know.
suppose. I mean, really, the only way it makes sense, I suppose, is if clones were having sex with each other and breeding. Because obviously, presumably, Rimmer can't breed. So
Right.
yeah.
But you're still going to have mutations down the line. I mean, and if these people all look exactly alike. So that's my question is, are they continuing to use the cloning tech, this far into things for everybody to look alike?
I assume they must be doing, mustn't they? Because I mean, if they banished all the mutants, then presumably, I mean, probably that seeding pod is probably hidden somewhere behind the ruler's
I
throne
mean,
room or something.
right. Assuming the clones can reproduce, because clones usually can't, but this is apparently, something grown from scratch where they can reproduce. So assuming they can, even two people who look alike reproducing, they have other genes in them from other past relatives. So the baby might come out looking like, you know, great grandma Flossie or something instead of one of them. I'm not saying it
Yeah.
very well, but you know what I mean.
I know what you mean. I mean, basically, you're saying it does not make sense for all of them to look exactly alike. I mean, I
Right.
guess I mean, unless they have literally locked up anyone who doesn't look exactly like the original templates, which I guess is possible.
Right. So, yeah, I have a thing about the banished people too, but I don't want to jump ahead.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, if we haven't got to that bit yet, then well, put a pin in it. Yeah. Oh, I think last time we mentioned this. Just skipping back briefly, the first clone, with where we see his backside, which is not Chris's backside, I'm afraid,
No,
unless he had a
sadly.
double. But I think I remember you making the point that he looks very sort of like Brutus. Yeah.
Yeah, he
Chris
does
Lindbergh.
he has that expression of kind of obsequiousness.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. Uh-huh. So yeah. I do love the way when Lister and Co are just about to arrive on the planet. And Crichton says it's too hideous to contemplate, etc. And the audience are way ahead. They can guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, we've seen how bad things were when Rimmer only had to put up with a hologram clone of himself or Ace. I mean, God knows what a whole planet for 600 years is going to do to him and
Exactly.
them.
Yeah. Mm. So yeah, I mean, I like the way it's economical. They don't need to actually say Rimmer has created thousands of his own clones. They just land on the planet and they just meet them.
Yep.
Yeah. Uh-huh. And I do like the joke about take us to your leader. Oh sir, how could you?
Yeah. I can't believe I'm going to say it.
Yeah. And of course, it does make sense, that given what we know about Rimmer, that the Rimmer clone society would be kind of modelled on the Romans. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he would do that. I'm either that or Napoleon's army. I figured it had to be one of the two.
Yeah. Exactly. Yes. I
Um,
guess they probably went with Romans because they thought it was more recognisable, or they had more Roman costumes lying around or something.
it's just unfortunate that they landed in the middle of all the Rimmers instead of among the banished, because you can imagine that the banished are not just the mutants, the physical mutants, but the ones who deviate from whatever Rimmer wants to deem as quote normal. Does that mean people who are gay or trans or some other quote
No, it
deviation
does.
from the
I was
quote
thinking
normal?
I was thinking that as you spoke, yeah, it probably does. Gosh, that's another good Vic idea that somebody could do. If they landed amongst the banished instead. I mean, you could actually do a really good Vic. I mean, of course, then you would get the problem of well, what are we supposed to do? I mean, how can we actually help them? I mean, because
Right.
hmm
It would actually be funny to find out that the banished made up 90% of the planet. They're off in a different part and they actually have their own government and everything. And they're doing just fine. And they just happen to land in this small patch of these backwards, you
that
know,
would be so funny. Yeah.
assholes.
That would be so funny. Yes.
That would be great.
Yeah, gosh, I've never been particularly fond of this episode, I must admit, but you've made it so much more interesting now.
I like that. If someone out there wants to run with the idea, here you go.
Yeah. I am also going to give a shout out to Carvey and Roadster Guy, who had the great idea to write a version of this, but instead of Rimmerworld, it's Listerworld, and you can find that Vic on AO3, if you're interested in reading it.
It is a very good fic. It's a 4-part fic, and I really enjoyed it, and I highly recommend it too.
Yeah, I mean, it's just such an interesting question, what would a planet of Lister clones be like? And obviously, the answer is, a peaceful, laid-back society.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, but then they find poor, after we get clone kissing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which kind of, well, I mean, I'm pretty sure it's meant to freak you out a bit, so it does freak me out, yeah.
Yep.
I mean, what they actually did, obviously, was they had female actors in masks, and they just sort of edited Chris's face in, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Okay.
Well, I figured they put Chris in makeup and a veil, and then I kind of figured that's what would happen, but
Yeah,
just made him look more feminine.
yeah. I mean, I think he says in the documentary he thinks he did actually get to kiss one of the concubines, but he didn't seem 100% sure about that. I think his memory was a bit foggy. It
It's been a while.
has, yes. Yeah. Oh yeah. So when they get put in the cell, it's interesting that cats, can smell, that the clone emperor isn't Rimmer, and then when they go back in, they get in the cell, he can smell, he can recognise Rimmer by his scent.
Yes.
It is kind of a continuity thing with Stoke Me a Clipper, because you have to say, well, shouldn't he know that Rimmer going off to be Ace is not actually Ace, it's actually his Rimmer, but well. This is Red Wolf.
More continuity. Either that or in that one he wanted it so bad he just wasn't going to say anything. So
That is an interesting angle. God, wouldn't it be funny if actually they all actually knew it was Rimmer going off to be Ace, and they were just sort of playing along.
I mean, Cat's dinged on for not being very bright sometimes, so it's kind of funny when once in a while you get a flash of something that looks like pre-planning or intelligence.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it makes sense. Really. I mean, you can absolutely get it. It makes sense. That they all knew it was him going off to be Ace, but they were sort of saving his pride. By letting it keeping up the charade.
Right.
It was the Ever Ace who dropped in on them. Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Possibly, yes.
And Rimmer in prison. He's so happy to see them. He can't remember their names, but he remembers them.
Yeah, it's kind of funny and touching at the same time, actually.
There hasn't been a president that can hold Derek Custer. That's a great line.
Yeah. Oh, and the way the Chinese worry balls are now worry marbles.
Yeah. Poor guy.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So oh, and of course that classic kind of gag that gets put in compilations and stuff. We could use a teleporter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a really great use of it. I do enjoy how Lister is coming. Okay, immediately. Okay, I have this idea. We'll do this and this and this and this.
Yes.
So bless his heart. It's nice he hasn't held it against Rimmer. He's still essentially Lister. He's still the guy who's gonna, go back for him.
Yeah, I mean,
bust him out.
Lister is that classic no person left behind person. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I mean, the teleporter is a convenient plot device. It gets them off Rimmerworld, and it avoids all the awkward moral dilemmas about a planet of clones. Who are sentient. What should we actually do with them? Actually, let's just get out of here quickly.
And we assume they eventually do end up back on their Starbug, even though they have to apparently visit themselves again.
I mean, sort of, the next episode reset button, they're back on Starbug. So I guess you have to assume that, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So when future Rimmer, says, "Oh, Rimmerworld was weeks ago," we're much more concerned right now about the quite hideous thing that's happened to Lister. Is he trolling them or not, basically?
Well, it's hard not to. You have to admit that if you were in that position, you'd probably do the same thing.
I mean, there's a deleted bit where it's clarified, that their future Lister was actually in the toilet, and he was trolling them, but they cut that. So I mean, I think, to be honest, the reason they cut it was probably they thought, it makes a good cliffhanger, to sort of lead into Out of Time. So maybe that's why they left it like that.
It is good. Now, do you know, were these aired in the order they were intended to be aired in? This one and Out of Time?
I don't know about Rimmerworld, but I mean, obviously, Out of Time would have had to. I mean, you would think. Well, I say that, you would think Out of Time would have had to come last. I mean, I say that, but I mean, Back to Reality was originally supposed to go out first in Series 5, unbelievably. So, I mean, but Out of Time has a cliffhanger, a to be continued cliffhanger. So I mean, surely Out of Time would have had to always be meant to be last. But yeah,
that's
I'm
possible.
not sure about Rimmerworld though. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it used to be easier to look these things up, but unfortunately, the official site was kind of a lot of the links are broken on it. So it's a little bit harder to reference things these days.
Well, it makes sense. I feel like looking at the rest of the season and looking at this, it does make sense that Rimmerworld would come right before this, because Rimmerworld, as I say, I feel like it's the turning point for him. And I don't know that there's a lot. I mean, the way season 6 is set up,
also, actually, sorry.
You have him getting, he gets his hard light in the second episode, and then other things happen. So I mean, that had to happen before a lot of these other things
Yes.
could. So maybe it
Sorry,
was set up
yeah,
that way.
I just sort of thought about the female simulant. We first meet her in Gunmen, so obviously Rimmerworld have had to come
Right.
after Gunmen, so yeah, they were kind of, I mean, really almost every episode, with the exception of Emo Hawk, had to be in the order it was. I mean, Sirens were Rimmer's soft light, Legion he becomes hard light, and then Gunmen with the
Right.
simulants, and then Rimmerworld where one of the simps come back. Out of time cliffhanger. So really, it's only emo Hawk that they could have done anything they like with, really. But yeah.
That's true. Although I think if I remember correctly, okay, I remember one of the points from the first recording, and I'll make it real quick because I know we're getting toward the end. I remember one of the things I pointed out was in Emo Hawk, he becomes Ace, he becomes heroic, and we know how much he hates Ace. So you almost wonder if Rimmerworld of him getting smeggy again and turning cowardly is kind of a deliberate
No,
pushback on
it
that.
absolutely could be. I mean, you can absolutely, sort of, do a sort of characterization, through line for Rimmer in series 6. I mean, it does kind of make sense when you put it like that. Yeah.
So yeah, I just remembered that. So yeah, that's one of the things I thought about when I watched him in order previously was that as much as he hates Ace and that he wanted to be left as Ace for 24 hours and then he's switched back to himself and you just have to wonder what happened, what put him in the mindset of by God, I won't do this again. And then he kind of swung back the other
I have
way.
read a Vic which
So
has ideas about what happened. Yes,
it's
yeah,
a theory.
yeah.
So
Yeah, which I won't go into more detail about, but I mean, I'm sure you can all guess. Yeah.
yeah.
Right, okay. I think we have probably come to the end of what we have to say about this episode, unless you had anything to add.
I think I'm good.
Huh? Oh, there is one more thing to do, which is the scores out of 10. Both overall and for slashiness.
I've thought about it. It's overall it's not my favorite episode, but it's not bad. I'd probably give it a 7.5 out of 10. I do like it, but again, when you're doing rating system, you're comparing to other things, and there's other episodes I like more. So yeah, I think probably a 7.5. For
Mm.
slashiness, I wasn't going to give it a terribly high, but then you brought up Lord Valerie Mine's post about, what if they've got something going on? So I kind of like to think of it that way.
Yes, I mean, yeah, works.
So, I mean, I don't know. No, seriously, slashiness in canon, I don't know, maybe a 5. I could be missing something, but I'd say about halfway just because I do like, I think Rimmer's very happy to see him when they come, when they show up. He seems particularly happy to see Lister. Lister has a lot of patience for him, but there's nothing, I don't feel like there's anything overtly slashy about the episode. But the vibe is always there.
Yeah, that's interesting. Actually, we agree on that one. I mean, for slashers, I was also going to give it 5 out of 10. I mean, yeah, because I mean, yeah, it's definitely not one of the slasher episodes. But it's sort of, I mean, there is stuff that you can read into, which we enjoy doing, of course. I mean, you can absolutely
Oh
read
yeah.
in, yeah, but yeah, not it's not up there with demons and angels or parallel universe even. Okay, and my overall score out of 10, I'm gonna yeah, I mean, I'm gonna say 6 out of 10, which probably sounds a bit harsh, but I mean, I'm obviously I'm comparing it with the rest of this particular series. It's probably my least favourite episode from this series. Which doesn't mean I don't like it. It's I mean,
Hmm.
there's usually one episode per series where yeah, it didn't quite do it for you, and that's always been the case here. Although a lot of the things you pointed out about the society and the clone society and stuff, that makes it more interesting. But I mean, I mean, if we just scoring it, for the episode that's on the screen, I'll give it 6 out of 10. So that wraps up this episode of Smed and the Femmes. Thank you to Hologamet for technical help, and also thank you to my guest Veronica Rich. It's good talking to you.
Thanks for inviting me. It's been fun.
If you'd like to give us feedback, people, you can do so, of course, on Tumblr, on Discord, or you could email us at smegandthefems@gmail.com. Also, my customary shout out to our YouTube channel. If you're looking for earlier episodes that you might have missed, the whole of the first 5 series is on our YouTube channel. Just look for Smeg and the Fems on YouTube. Okay, and the next episode we'll be covering is one which had fans on tenterhooks for years as they awaited a resolution to its cliffhanger. And no, I do not mean only the good. It is, of course, Out of Time. I hope you'll join us then. For now, goodbye.